Hello and welcome everybody to another Kano Tryharding Modern. Freshly shaven Kano here to tell you that we'll be playing green Tron again. Now, I've played this deck enough in recent memory, and I think the most difficult thing for me besides mulliganing would be that sideboarding. I think sideboarding is very difficult. And I noticed there's some cards that are in the sideboard that are good cards that I tend not to get, so I've taken them out of the deck. And in their place, I've replaced them with things that are maybe slightly on the janky side, but I'm trying some stuff out, because the meta won't evolve if you always play the same thing, right? So we're here testing out a couple of things today. Today, added to the sideboard of my particular favorite Tron list is a trading post. Trading post can be good for drawing additional cards. If for some reason we need to do that, we can get artifacts back from our grave to our hand if for some reason we can't exile them with Karn, and we can gain a bunch of life with Trading Post. It's also a 4-mana artifact that's kind of reasonable to bring in. Porter. It's like pulling up my green screen. Go lay down. Yeah, so we can gain life, draw cards, make goats if for some reason we wanted to make goats. But it's also a combo with Spine of Ish-Sa. So Karn is good. Karn Great Creator, I'm specifically mentioning here. Karn Great Creator is good. However, there are times where Liquimetal Coating will not destroy a permanent that you want. Perhaps we've gone a couple of turns, we've had to wish for things like Trinisphere, we need to blow up a particular permanent. I have Spine of Ish-Sa basically for this reason. It's a 7-mana artifact that when it enters the battlefield, you destroy a permanent. Now, when it's put into a graveyard from the battlefield, you put it into its owner's hand. So with something like Trading Post as an example, you can repeatedly destroy permanents. I understand that this is a little bit slower, but there are cards in the sideboard I wasn't using anyway, so I might as well replace them with something that maybe in an edge case might do some work. So let me double check that I have enough play points and stuff to enter a league. Okay, I do. And on to a modern league we go. Alright, round 1. Okay, so our opponent is on the play and gets to go first. Our hand's not bad, but it doesn't assemble Tron anytime soon, so we're gonna mulligan. Alright, if we draw a sphere or a map turn 1, this is excellent. We're gonna throw back Wormcoil Engine. So one thing that I want to mention here is we're not running Ugin the Ineffable. I really do not like 6-mana Ugin. I feel like it's just like casting a Wormcoil Engine. It's strong, but it's not as impactful as playing either Karn. Okay, we top deck a tower, so start power plant and pass the turn. Which is kind of like that's why we're maxing out on Wormcoil Engines basically. I would rather have Wormcoil Engine versus an aggressive deck than I would have Ugin the Ineffable versus a lot of other decks. Blowing up, individual permanents, getting the colorless cost reduction, it's all fine and great. It's just, I feel like we could do better. Alright, so our opponent is on Jund, so we can expect a lot of hand hate, Assassin's Trophies, Kolaghan's Commands, and the like. We draw Karn, Great Creator. So, play a forest, Ancient Stirrings. We're looking for a mine. There's a mine. Rest to the bottom. Kind of sad that we had to play and use up green mana for that. Our opponent does not have Assassin's Trophy. If they did, I would have expected them to Assassin's Trophy Urza's Tower. Okay, Inquisition. They see they can take nothing and that we have Tron. They sack a land to draw. Okay, yeah, I don't know what my opponent's plan was there. But we take a win versus Jund. Okay. So let's see, versus Jund. Veil of Summer's like okay. It's not as good versus hand hate as it is versus counterspells, because hand hate's very cheap and comes very early. And it's like kind of like using a dispel on your opponent's counterspells that cantrips. And so it's just a little bit better. I might drop Walking Ballista in favor of something cheaper, just like a Thragtusk. Ballista's really good, but we could still wish it out of the sideboard if we needed it. Yeah, okay. We'll run it back like this. Just minor change. So post-sideboard, Jund has a lot of things that are extremely annoying. They'll have Assassin's Trophies, they'll have Fulminator Mages, they might even have Surgical Extractions, which would be very bad. Our opponent mulligans to 6 immediately. This is very close. I think I'm going to keep this. I probably should mulligan down to 6, but I want to have some extra cards versus my opponent, and I like having the Forest in the opener. If my opponent starts on some sort of Fulminator line, we will have the mana to Ancient Stirrings regardless. Our opponent mulliganed to 5. Starts Bloodstained Mire, cracks Bloodstained Mire, and finds Blood Crypt tapped. Okay. We draw another Ancient Stirrings. So I'm gonna start Tower Map. If we draw a Tron piece, we'll just have Tron on turn 3. That's the biggest upside. If not, we have Star and Forest and 2 Ancient Stirrings. So if my opponent has some kind of disruption here, we should be able to fight through it pretty easily. Okay, Stomping Ground tapped. Their opponent is on a very slow, very little action hand. Okay. Alright, so we have 2 options. We can either crack map or we can cast Scrying. It is more likely that my opponent has hate that interacts with my hand rather than my board. It's possible they could destroy Expedition Map with something like Assassin's Trophy, but then we would follow it up with 2 Ancient Stirrings to find our last land here. They could have an Ancient Grudge, they could have a Natural State, they could have an Abrupt Decay, but the odds that they have those versus the odds that they have Inquisition or Thoughtseize, I'm leaning on they have a Thoughtseize, if anything, at this point. So we're going, that's what they were more likely to top deck anyway. So we're going to Sylvan Scrying, get a power plant, and pass the turn. We've already played a land this turn because we just played the Forest in order to cast that. Okay, opponent plays a Nurturing Peatland. I think my opponent is basically on like Fulminator or Bust to try and disrupt us right now. Because if they play like Liliana, that doesn't really do anything. Okay, they have Damping Sphere. That makes sense. So we are going to not be able to produce a ton of mana. We'll play Power Plant. We will play Stirrings. We'll take Karn, Great Creator. Since we're being choked on mana with Damping Sphere, we want our cheapest threat, and that would be Karn, Great Creator. We will be able to play him next turn. Okay. The good news about Damping Sphere is the effect is symmetrical, so if my opponent casts a spell here, they won't be able to cast anything else. Okay, they're going to pillage a power plant. Land destruction is sort of okay here. I'm going to tutor up a blast zone. That should let us get rid of the Damping Sphere. I didn't want to tutor for a power plant here because my opponent has 0 threats. They're putting me under 0 pressure at all. And if they had a Surgical Extraction, that could be a blowout potentially. We need to be making land drops as much as possible. So play Blast Zone, play Chromatic Star. I could tick up Blast Zone to 2 this turn, but like I said, I'm not in a huge hurry. Crack Chromatic Star for green, draw a card. Another Karn, Great Creator. We're going to Ancient Stirrings. It costs 2 mana due to Damping Sphere. And we'll take another Urza's Tower. Things start to get a little trickier when my opponent starts playing threats, but my opponent mulliganed very low. Bloodbraid Elf. Okay, cascading into a Thoughtseize. Thoughtseize is mild disruption at this point. I think their best take is probably a Wormcoil Engine. Oh, they choose not to cast. Oh, they can't. Damping Sphere is symmetrical, so they can't pay the cost. So Bloodbraid's just a 4 mana 3/2 with haste, which is not especially good. Alright, so we are going to Sylvan Scrying, get a mine, play a map. Pass the turn. We could have just played land and Karn, but I think Blast Zone is going to be fast enough, and if not, we'll be able to just make land drops into a Wormcoil Engine, which Jund is going to have some difficulty answering. I know I've changed my strategy a couple of times across the last few turns, which is not ideal, but I don't know what my opponent's doing right now. They're having trouble tapping their mana, or they've decided against casting whatever they're going to cast. They hit us for 3, we go to 14. Maelstrom Pulse Expedition Map. Okay. We draw Emrakul, the Promised End. So, play Tower. We can tick up Blast Zone to 2 if we want. That will cost 3 of our mana, we have 2 left. So I'm going to play a little bit out of order. I should not have played that tower. Okay. Tick up Blast Zone to 2. Pass the turn. We're looking to hit basically any land right now. We're not playing Karn and Wishing simply because almost none of our wish targets are relevant right now. Okay, there's a land. Play Wormcoil. And now Damping Sphere no longer matters. We can just, like, one more land and we can play some of our best threats immediately. So, okay, opponent plays a Liliana of the Veil. They make us sack, so we get some tokens. They can't bolt a token, though, because they don't have enough mana. They can't Fatal Push one either. Okay, we untap. We draw a forest, so play a forest, go to combat. Attack with both creatures at Liliana. Kind of hoping my opponent pushes one and blocks the other, or bolts one and then blocks the other. Sweet. Okay. So my opponent has 2 cards in hand. I think my best plan right now is to play Karn and tick up. My opponent can make us discard, but like, they're only going to have like 1 or 2 cards in hand. I guess I could attack their mana. If I down tick though and they have another bolt, Karn just dies. So we're going to play around bolt and direct damage and uptick on our opponent. My opponent is basically out of resources in hand. We took Tarmogoyf. Okay. If things really got desperate, we could uptick on ourself, exile Emrakul, and then restart the game with an Emrakul in play. That is a valid line. Okay, opponent plays another Tarmogoyf. We untap. We draw Wormcoil Engine. So, uptick on our opponent's hand. The fact that they didn't uptick Liliana means that they have something in hand they want to keep, and if it's an Assassin's Trophy, because they've left mana up for that, we're basically fine. Alright, it was a Kolaghan's Command. So, time to run out this Wormcoil Engine, which outclasses that Tarmogoyf in basically every way. We've made it safe for our opponent to start upticking Liliana, but, I mean, like, we're fine. I could restart the game with the Tarmogoyf in play next turn. I'm actually going to uptick on myself and exile Ugin, because I've never ever gotten to restart the game. And we'll see if our opponent lets that happen, and we can start the game with an Ugin in play. Which I'm pretty sure is what they call ley line of win the game immediately. Actually, I wonder if Karn Great Creator would be better, because that would let us attack our opponent's mana almost immediately. No, I think Ugin's gotta be better. Maybe I shouldn't do that. We're already in such a dominating position. Allowing my opponent to draw a new hand of 7 and starting the game over, even with a couple of things in play, is probably not optimal. Our opponent is in the tank. I hope that they're not just, like, rage quitting and making me wait. I'll give my opponent the benefit of the doubt. You never know. Their house could have been struck by a meteorite and they're no longer able to play the game. I'm beginning to suspect my opponent is BMing me. It has been a whole 4 or 5 minutes. That, or they uninstalled their client. I just looked it up. The average cost of Jund online is $700. The average cost of Tron online is about $270. So my opponent paid double the cost to lose to me. Maybe that's why they're salty. Once again, if you find yourself in a situation where you are mad to losing to a deck, just concede. Do not make your opponent wait. It is against the terms of service of Magic Online. I have been there. I have been really, really salty, and I have lost the game to really, really dumb crap before, but I try and laugh and move on. Alright, round 2, here we go. Alright, I'll play first. Gotta mulligan that. Oof, gotta mulligan this too. Alright, I'll try and work with this. We'll put back Ulamog, and we'll put back O-Stone. So, start power plant map. We have an 8 in 55 chance of assembling Tron on turn 3. And we're against Hardened Scales aggro. A deck I haven't seen in quite a while. This version appears to be running Luris. Okay, so opponent gets to draw an additional card. We draw Karn Liberated. So we have two options. We can play a forest and tutor up a Tron piece, or we can play a forest and play a sphere. I think we go for the Tron piece tutor. And grab mine. Pass the turn. Next turn we have 2 hits at drawing the Tron piece, the tower. We also have 2 hits at hitting an Ancient Stirrings, potentially giving us the tower. And we have 2 hits at another map or a Sylvan Scrying to hit a tower. So the odds of us getting the tower at some point are actually quite high. The odds of us dying immediately are pretty quick as well. Metallic Mimic does enable some pretty fast Tron shenanigans. So we're going to play Sphere. Crack it for green. We get an All Is Dust, which is less than worthless in this current matchup. Almost all of my opponent's threats are colorless. They do not run colored permanents, I think, other than Hardened Scales. The standard version ran Winding Constrictor, but I don't think I've ever seen that in the modern version. At least not in a modern version that was like high in the bracket or anything like that. The Ozolith. That is another card that was recently printed that turns out to be very good in Hardened Scales. Whenever a creature leaves the battlefield, if they had counters on it, put those counters on the Ozolith, and at the beginning of combat, you can move those counters onto a creature. When counters are put on the Ozolith, they stay the same, but when they're put on a creature, Hardened Scales has the opportunity to adjust the costs again. Karn, we can only animate non-creature artifacts, unfortunately. But we can play a mine, play Karn, and I'm going to wish for Ensnaring Bridge, and I really hope that I top deck a land or a 1-mana spell. So take Ensnaring Bridge. We have to hope that our opponent does not have a Thoughtseize. They probably run an Assassin's Trophy or an Abrupt Decay, some kind of, or Maelstrom Pulse, some kind of destroy non-land permanent interaction. Opponent attacks Karn, okay. They leave back, hanger back. The problem is, if my opponent has a Ravager and Karn doesn't stick around, they can make an absolutely enormous number of 1/1 tokens that Ensnaring Bridge will not block. What? Oh, so, okay, now I understand. With that number of counters on Ravager, well, first off, we're just dead to Walking Ballista, but my opponent could have, even if we had landed in Snaring Bridge, they could have attacked with Blinkmoth and then just put the counters on at instant speed after it had gotten basically past the bridge, but... Okay. Cool. The good news is we do have sideboard for this. So, we are taking out All Is Dust, because the card does nothing. And I think we're also going to take out Ugin the Spirit Dragon and Emrakul the Promised End. In their place, we are going to bring in 3 Wilts and a Thragtusk. I believe is the optimal configuration for this. So Hardened Scales aggro I don't think is actually that great of a matchup for us. Simply because they do have a lot of ways to cheat out very quick victories. We have ways to interact, I think we're just kind of slow comparatively, even in like the near optimal circumstances. Okay, this hand has no green mana and 2 of the same Tron land, so I'm going to mulligan. This hand is better, but risky. Potentially we have a quick Karn, and we're on the play, so we do have the tempo advantage. If we draw Sphere, Star, or Tower, this hand is much better than it is right now. And considering that's about a fifth of our deck, I'm willing to risk keeping this. It's not often that you have a hand that's like, oh, well, you know, if we draw this card, our hand is better. Like, hands like that exist. But if you have a hand that's like, if we draw literally a fifth of our deck, we're fine. Like, you know. So I'll be interested to see whether my opponent takes Karn or Sylvan Scrying here. They go with the Karn. That's fair. They're probably not scared of Wormcoil just straight up. I forgot, if we drew map, our hand was also pretty good. Not amazing, but like, there you go. 16 cards out of 55 rather than 12. Okay, so opponent plays Blinkmoth Nexus, Hardened Scales, Ozolith. Okay, so if my opponent has a Mimic, they're going to play a ton of relevant interacting spells. I think we just tutor Tron Piece now. We could get Blast Zone, but a lot of their threats actually don't cost mana. And Blast Zone's minimum number is not like Ratchet Bomb. It can't hit 0. It hits 1 only. 1 or higher. We're kind of lucky that my opponent has had more interactive spells than proactive threats because their best hands against us are proactive. So this is giving us a lot of time to find something to win the game with. We have a lot of top decks from this position that are great. Okay, opponent plays a Walking Ballista on 2 and passes. We draw a not useful spell, play Sanctum, pass the turn. So in this scenario, specifically, Thragtusk is worse than Wormcoil, but we didn't go down on any Wormcoils in our deck to... Are we dead? Opponent can sack this, put a ton of counters on Ravager, sack Ravager, put a ton of counters on Ozolith, put a ton of counters on Walking Ballista, move to combat, put all the counters from Ozolith onto Walking Ballista. I think that's lethal, actually. If that's the case, my opponent had just enough cards to win with just enough protection to disrupt us, which is kind of unfortunate, but like, there's not a lot you can do about that. Okay, opponent does modular onto the correct creature. Ozolith gets all the counters from the Arcbound Worker creature. Our opponent can sack Darksteel Citadel and then Ravager to itself. Okay, they put 9 counters on Ozolith and 9 counters on Ballista. Then they move to combat, put 11 counters from Ozolith onto Ballista, and then shoot us 20 times, or just attack. Okay. And like I said, this matchup's kind of hard. And the fact that they can explode so quickly, basically getting so much value off of Hardened Scales every single time, makes this deck very difficult for Tron to fight. And the fact that most of their permanents are colorless, like for things such as All is Dust or Ugin being our traditional like non-land permanent board wipes, doing nothing against them, makes this even harder. Especially because like those are 2 of the ways that we take advantage of Tron mana out of like the 6 or 7 possible ways to do it, which is a significant portion of our lines. So to beat Hardened Scales, you almost have to be like teched in your sideboard or very lucky. Okay. Well, this is a turn 3 Tron into Karn or backup Karn, or Karn and backup Karn if my opponent doesn't have hand hate or land destruction. So I'm going to put back Blast Zone. I suspect that if my opponent has land destruction that they can use to interact with us, they'll try and hit the tower, and I want a redundant tower. It's possible I should have started on tower to try and entice my opponent, if they have land destruction, to use it on the tower rather than the mine or power plant. Our opponent is playing a 3-color deck with Mishra's Baubles and no Luris. So I have no idea what my opponent is playing right now. We play a tower, pass the turn. Okay, so the opponent looks at the top card of our deck and draws an additional card. They play an Overgrown Tomb, and they play a Tarmogoyf. So let's go get a mine. Goyf resolves. We untap. We draw Ancient Stirrings. Play mine. Now, there's a really good chance that this Karn dies to this Tarmogoyf. I'm still going to attack my opponent's mana base. I have another Karn to follow this up with, and limiting my opponent's action this early means that they have to basically dedicate Tarmogoyf to attacking Karn. My opponent is also likely Abzand and not Jund, which means we don't have to worry as much about things like Bolt, unless they're running 4 colors. So they'll probably cycle Street Wraith and then cast an instant or sorcery to get Tarmogoyf big enough to attack Karn. We will have 10 mana and an Ancient Stirrings to try and find another Karn or an Ugin to interact with the board. My opponent could have an Assassin's Trophy. That would actually be a Rancor. Okay, if you had asked me to guess 30 spells that my opponent was going to cast, Rancor would not have been one of them. So I have no idea what my opponent is playing. We draw a 3rd tower. Okay, well at this point, play Karn. I would like to continue to attack my opponent's mana base, but I think I've got to take a turn off and hit Goyf. Rancor is going to go back to their hand. We're going to play Sphere and use Ancient Stirrings now. We could have cast Sylvan Scrying, but we're trying to hit threats, so Wormcoil Engine will do. It should be something that's somewhat difficult for our opponent to deal with. They're Abzan, so Wormcoil is a bit worse because they might have Path, but Path would get us to green mana at least. Alright, our opponent cannot beat Karn Wormcoil. So, Abzan. I think because Path is a thing, we're going to swap Wormcoils for Thragtusk. Actually, I'm going to only do one. I want one more Thragtusk. It's a little harder for us to cast on average, but it survives Path a little better and gives us value immediately, which we might need to stall with. It's possible my opponent has Damping Spheres, so I'm going to bring in 2 Wilts, and I'm going to drop Ballista and Emrakul the Promised End. Emrakul has some really funny interactions where, you know, if you mind control your opponent, you can really, really mess up their day, especially if they're playing black and they're playing discard or they're playing creature exile and things to search and things like that. But I think it's too expensive for our average hands to take advantage of versus our opponent's deck. So we do have to watch out for hand hate. We have to take that into account when we're mulliganing. We have to be aware of the possibility of surgical extractions or permanent destruction. Alright, I'm absolutely going to keep this, and I'm going to put back Chromatic. No, I'm going to put back O-Stone. This is a turn 3 Tron hand with 2 Karn Great Creators. So if my opponent has hand hate, they will almost certainly take Expedition Map. And that is why I kept Star over O-Stone. I want to be able to dig with Star. Yep, opponent takes map. If we top deck a map, if we top deck the last Tron piece, if we top deck an Ancient Stirrings, all 3 of those things are amazing. Another Star or Sphere is okay. Like, one of the reasons I'm calling out, like, what draws are good here. I've seen a lot of people, and I've played against a few people that are complaining that, like, oh, Tron's just top deck luck. Tron no fun, Tron top deck, well, I lose. Like, that is such a... It's a horrible way of thinking. Because Tron is built to be ultra consistent. And, like, every single time I've called out something, there has been 16 to 20... Like, between 12 and 20 cards in our deck that we could draw and make a viable line off of. So literally a third of our deck is good to draw at any time. There are times where our options become incredibly narrow, especially when your opponent is playing a Damping Sphere. But, like, we can still just top deck into 4 lands and play Karn Great Creator. Like, we don't need 7 mana Tron here. So, crack for green mana, draw a card. I mean, there's Tron. We'll play an Urza's Tower, because that's the land our opponent knows we have. You know what? I'm not going to crack for green mana right now. If my opponent destroys Star, we're going to draw anyway. But we might need green mana on our next turn for something like a Wilt. Which would only give us 3 mana. We wouldn't be able to play Karn. But we would have 2 draws, so we might be able to play something else. Opponent is on the mono Street Wraith hand. And Tarmogoyf. Okay. Alright, we draw another Tron piece. So, crack for green. We draw another tower. Play Power Plant. Pass the turn. So, next turn we can play Karn Great Creator. We can wish for... I want to say Bridge, but I don't think Bridge would necessarily be the best. Okay, opponent plays a Rancor. Still not sure about the Rancor. I don't know... I guess it's just card advantage? Opponent has played all 4 Street Wraiths. They paid 1 for a Mishra's Bauble. They look at the top card of our deck, and they hit us for 6. Okay. The fact that my opponent is not cracking this Windswept Teeth tells me that they're trying to hit a 4th land. Probably for something like a Siege Rhino. Okay, we top deck Sylvan Scrying, which is not great, but serviceable. Play Karn Great Creator. We will wish. And honestly, I kind of want to get Trading Post here. Trading Post would let me gain life and keep my hand size small, so that something like Ensnaring Bridge could potentially come down. It also dodges their Inquisition, potentially. So we have nothing that we can wish for that can destroy a Damping Sphere until we get to Spinovish Saw, but that's a ways off. So I'm going to actually try taking Trading Post here. I put it in the deck because... or I put it in the sideboard because I had a bunch of sideboard cards I was like never bringing in or wishing for like once every 30 games or something like that. That wasn't, I don't think is helping me win enough. So we're going to see if Trading Post is any good here. I'm getting a little experimental here. Alright, our opponent has a Field of Ruin. And they Thoughtseize. Okay, so they didn't have an Inquisition, they actually had a Thoughtseize. Which does make a big difference here. They take Trading Post. Okay. I think they have to attack and kill Karn, though. And they know we're holding a tower, so they're going to have to try and hit Power Plant here with this Field of Ruin. That's fine. If they attack us instead of Karn, I would be extremely surprised. Okay, so they attack Karn, they kill Karn. Okay, they are not activating Field. They're actually trying to cast something. Okay, maybe they are trying to activate Field. Or Damping Sphere is preventing them from casting something that's 3 mana here. No, they're trying to Field. Okay. They hit Tower. Now, if they've got Surgical, that's pretty bad. But we do have cheap threats coming up, so hopefully that's not too bad. Okay, we untap. We draw Sylvan Scrying. Play Tower. Play Karn. Wish. This time, we will get Ensnaring Bridge. Pass the turn. So if our opponent has Hand Hate, we want to force them to use it. They're playing Death Shadow. So the Rancor must be a way to force through damage so your opponent can't chump block. And they attack Karn, they kill Karn. Sure. We untap. We draw Wormcoil Engine. So Sylvan Scrying, get a Blast Zone, play Blast Zone, and play Ensnaring Bridge for 4. So if my opponent has Maelstrom Pulse, Assassin's Trophy, etc., we're just dead. Which might have been a reason to hold up Blast Zone on one. But if they don't have a destruction spell for Ensnaring Bridge right now, we basically untap and win. Okay, they had a Maelstrom Pulse. So there were ways we could have survived this. This was the one that gave us the best chance of winning. And we also now have information about what our opponent is doing. So our opponent is on Abzan Death Shadow, which, I'll be honest, I've not seen before. I think it's time to bring in Veil of Summer. And I'm going to go down All Is Dust and probably an Ulamog. I know I'm cutting a lot of threats here. Oh, I did take out a Wormcoil, didn't I? Or was that the other match? I'm starting to lose track. Anyway. Alright. I'll play first. This hand assembles Tron with a couple of cantrips, so we're going to keep. If my opponent has a Thoughtseize, and they almost certainly do, considering the deck that they're playing, if they don't fire it off turn 1, they'll be sad, because we'll have Veil of Summer for protection, and already have just the Tron lands, effectively. So let's see how our opponent starts. Godless Shrine untapped. Inquisition. Okay. They pretty much have to take Sylvan Scrying. We do not have a bad follow-up. If that is the case, they take Sylvan Scrying. Okay, we untap. We draw Thragtusk. So, Ragstar for green, draw a card. Karn Liberated. Okay, play Power Plant, play Sphere. Pass the turn. We are going to leave up Sphere, adding green mana for Veil. If my opponent has another Hand Hate spell or something else that we need to prevent from targeting us or our permanents. Giver of Runes for our opponent, okay. Giver is not incredibly relevant to what we're doing. It can give creatures protection from colorless, so it can prevent us from like taking their creatures with Karn. But it can't stop Karn from taking their lands. That was luck. Take Godless Shrine, pass the turn. And it had to be exactly top deck. Cracking a Sphere there would have prevented us from getting enough mana to actually cast Karn. So that one was a lucky top deck. I will call that out. And opponent concedes, giving us the match. I will see you guys in round 4. Alright, round 4, here we go. I think I'm going to keep this. The number of top decks that we can have here, like map, scrying, it's pretty high. Now my opponent is playing Death and Taxes. I can tell you this immediately because of the Aether Vial and Cave of Koilos. More specifically, they're almost certainly playing Eldrazi and Taxes, which means we have to watch out for things like Thought-Knot Seer, Eldrazi Displacer shenanigans. This makes all of our searching pretty bad. Okay, our opponent has a Tide Hollow Sculler, so they, I think, take Karn Great Creator here. This is going to... Oh, they take O-Stone. Interesting. This is going to be a bit of a tough matchup because our opponent is a proactive deck with Disruption stapled onto creatures, and that's going to make our life kind of tough. So they play an Eldrazi Displacer, and they get in for 2. Okay, we untap. Oblivion Stone was actually an amazing top deck here. So, play Power Plant. Play O-Stone. Pass the turn. Opponent vials in Leonin Arbiter. Okay. Ghost Quarter or Field of Ruin would really suck. They sack Silent Clearing to draw. They're looking for it. Let's see if they found it. Doesn't look like they did. So opponent attacks for 7. If we top deck the last Tron piece here, blowing up this board is amazing. Okay, they got an Eldrazi Temple. Okay, that is not the last Tron piece, unfortunately. Okay, so at our upkeep, opponent flickers Eldrazi Displacer, which puts O-Stone back in our hand, and then lets them take a different card. So they can take whatever our best play is here right now. They take Karn. So we're going to play a Sanctum, pass the turn, and if my opponent has anything they can vial in, we're basically dead. Okay. They don't, so our opponent gets another shot at Mana Disruption. They keep Vial on 3, which probably means they're... Okay, so by keeping Vial on 3, that lets Flicker Wisp be a way they can kill us. So they're going to attack for 7. We go down to 4. And basically, if they have Ghost Quarter, Field of Ruin, Flicker Wisp, any of those, we're done. Opponent sacks Silent Clearing to get an additional draw. Plains. Plains doesn't do it. So if they've got a Flicker Wisp, we're dead. Okay. No Flicker Wisp. So play a Forest. Pass the turn. Okay, opponent vials in Wasteland Strangler. We could crack to O-Stone in response, but they're just trying to deny us the ability to play Karn. Okay, well, we gotta do this. Take care of the majority of our opponent's things. If they have more hand disruption, though, and they can take Thragtusk, we're basically done. And it's a Thought-Knot Seer, so we have the top deck. Tron Piece or Wormcoil. And by Tron Piece, I mean Tower. Okay, opponent plays another Aether Vial. Here goes. Blast Zone. Wait a minute. My opponent took... They took Oblivion Stone? That was not correct, opponent. That lets me do this. And that lets me stay alive. I mean, potentially we can cast Karn Liberated next turn. And my opponent only has 2 cards in hand. If they had taken Thragtusk, we would have just died. So that was a mistake on our opponent's part. They play Kaya, Orzhov Usurper. They take Ozone and Karn Great Creator out. Hang on a minute. So we pay 2 mana, Sylvan Scrying. They can't prevent us from searching. We get Tower. Then we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 mana. We can't cast Emrakul, but we can still cast Karn. So Sylvan Scrying. Get Tower. Play Tower. Play Karn. We will sack Sanctum. Yeah, let's take Ulamog. I feel like that's going to be a great follow-up. Get rid of Thought-Knot. We draw Expedition Map. Go to combat. Kill Kaya. My opponent could have like a path, but that wouldn't do much. Yeah. So I'd like to reiterate, the only reason that we're still in this game is because my opponent did not take the spell that made us win. we should have absolutely lost this game. Opponent has a 1-drop they're vialing in, and it's a Giver of Runes. Okay, opponent concedes. All right. Well, thank goodness, because our opponent's deck is very tough for us to beat. So, versus Eldrazian taxes. Wilt can kill Aether Vial and Tide Hollow Sculler. Though I don't think that's what we want. Veil of Summer is nice because it can protect us from Tide Hollow, but it's only Tide Hollow. I think the only thing we could potentially bring in is Thragtusks, and I'll drop all his dust, and we'll go down 1 Ugin. No, we'll go down an Emrakul, just to bring in more Thragtusks. I think not a fantastic sideboard, but I mean Thragtusk won us the game, so oof. This hand is very slow and basic heavy. It's not terrible, but want something a little faster. Opponent kept 7. Yeah, we're going to 5. I'm going to 4. All right. Put back Ballista, Karn, and Map. Okay, opponent starts Concealed Courtyard. Nothing. We start Mine Star. Pass the turn. So we're hoping to top deck a Tron land that isn't mine, or hit it in our top 2 draws. Opponent Scullers gets to look at our hand. Our opponent not having Aether Vial is a big deal. They're so much slower without an Aether Vial. Okay, Stirrings is a really good potential follow-up. So Stirrings, there's a tower, rest of the bottom, play tower, play star. We could potentially Stirrings into Tron here. Okay, opponent top decks a Ghost Quarter. Arbiter Ghost Quarter is not how we win this game. So we cannot search our library due to Leon and Arbiter. They get in for 2, we go down to 18. Untap. We draw a map. So, Crack Star for green. Worm Coil. Okay, Ancient Stirrings. Gotta hit another Tron piece here. Alright, mine is not what I want. I'm gonna take Forest, because it potentially lets us cast more Stirrings. I'm not going to cast Map here because I can't really search my library at the moment. Let's see if my luck holds true, because every time I've ever gotten Leon and Arbiter Ghost Quartered, my opponent has had 2 or 3 Ghost Quarters in hand. Okay, so opponent starts by attacking us for 4. Second Arbiter. Okay, we are never searching our library this game. Crack Star for green. Draw Thragtusk. Play Map because we have nothing better to do, but we're never cracking Map. So how do we win here? We win by top-decking lands before we die to cast Thragtusks and Worm Coils. Okay, so we take 6. We go to 8. We have to top-deck land. Second Aether Vial. Okay. Karn is not a land, which I think means we lose. The mean thing about Arbiter is you have to actually activate the ability of the Arbiter. It's not a cost that can be paid when you're paying other costs. So frequently on MTGO, your opponents will walk into Arbiters the same way they walk into Ashiok when you're playing Ashiok, 3 mana. That prevents your opponent from searching. Arbiter 3. Yep. So, okay. On to game 3. The Mulligan made that one very difficult, but Arbiter Ghost Quarter after Mulligan made it impossible. Yeah. No sideboard, we'll run it back. Alright, we'll play first. A little bit slow, we're going to go to 6. Not fantastic, but it should be serviceable on the play. Yeah, we have 1 redraw and a scrying. Our opponent also mulliganed to 6. They mulliganed to 5. Okay. So we will start Power Plant Star, pass the turn. If we can draw a Tron land off of this star and play it into a scrying, we'll have Tron on turn 3. There's another scrying. Okay. So play scrying. Let's get a mine. Okay, pass the turn. So if my opponent plays a Leon and Arbiter this turn, we cannot cast scrying. Okay, so we cannot cast scrying this turn. We can, however, cast a Chromatic Sphere and dig a little bit. Okay. If my opponent... Actually, I shouldn't have done that. I should have left up 2 mana to potentially pay for Leon and Arbiter, because now if my opponent plays a Ghost Quarter, they can just take out one of our lands for free. Tide Hollow Sculler. Okay. My opponent has the option of taking Scrying or taking Karn Great Creator. Yeah, I should not have cracked that Sphere. That was a big mistake. Because even if we did Scrying next turn, we could crack Sphere, then play Thragtusk, which would put us in a very good position. As it stands right now, even if we somehow get Tron next turn, we can't play anything. Because, yeah, either our opponent takes Tron or the method we get Tron. And we get Ghost Quartered into Oblivion. So, that was an enormous mistake. I am so sorry, everybody. Okay. Well, play Sphere. Pass the turn. Opponent attacks for 4. Okay, opponent plays a Plains and a Flicker Wisp. Okay, so they Flicker Wisp Tide Hollow, which gives us back Karn and lets them relook at our hand. So they can reevaluate and take something else if they'd like. Probably Scrying. Nope, they just take Karn again. Okay. So we top deck a map. Crack and add green. We did not hit a land. So just play a map. We're going to leave up 2 mana in case our opponent tries to force us to search. Yeah, I think I punted this game. I'm so sorry. Opponent hits us for 7. We needed a land last turn. Okay, second Arbiter. We will never search our library. Play Star. Crack Star for green. Play Tower. Yeah, no, we lost. Sorry, everybody. So I'm not saying we would have won had I not made that mistake, but we would be in a massively better position. So, alright, on to round 5. Alright, round 5, here we go. Alright, this hand is unkeepable, so we're going to 6. This hand is also not great, we're going to 5. Did I say 5? I meant 4. Oh my god, okay. Well, sometimes you're going to have hands like this, so hopefully Kano shows you how you can win with a hand like this, and not how to futilely stare in jealousy as your opponent assembles Tron. So, we start with a Tron land that we top deck, as you should always hope to do. Alright, opponent is also on Tron. Fortunately, we draw Karn Liberated and not another Tron land. So, play a forest, pass the turn. Opponent just has natural Tron, no other spells, into Karn Great Creator. Could have cracked map, don't think it would matter. Our opponent is taking us off of mana this entire game. So, our opponent would have been able to keep us off of mana and then played threats. So, okay. So Tron versus Tron, huh? I think I gotta bring in the Wilts. Not super thrilled about it. All is dust, going to be practically worthless here. Worm Coil is not great. Yeah, okay. Cool, we're gonna run it like this. Alright, we'll play first. Mulligan. This is significantly better. I'm gonna put back a tower, and we're hoping to top deck Sphere Star, Forest, obviously Urza's Power Plant. Our opponent mulligans to 5, mulligans to 4, mulligans to 3. So odds are, unless they happen to top deck perfectly Tron into a threat, us playing a Karn Great Creator on turn 4 will be more than enough. Start tower, pass the turn. Opponent starts Power Plant. Okay, we'll play a mine, and next turn this game is over. 2 Tron lands on a mulligan to 3. That's quite respectable, opponent. But it's not good enough to beat Big Papa Karn. Pass the turn. Opponent plays another Urza's Mine. into a Stone Coil Serpent on 2. We draw Wilt. So, uptick Karn. Tectonic Edge, huh? Play Sanctum of Ugin. Play Karn Great Creator. And wish for Liquid Metal Coating. Game's over. Alright. Game 3. We were at a significant disadvantage because we were on the draw for Game 3. But our opponent has been shown to have to mulligan at least once. And they're playing Stone Coil Serpents, which I'm not sure about. This hand might work. We're on the draw, though, and Wilt is not going to hit a map that they play if they play it on the play. I think we're better off mulliganing to 6. We are significantly better off mulliganing to 6. Okay. We'll put back a mine. Opponent starts tower. We basically just have to hope they stumble, which is never a good plan. I have a Maze Mine Tome. Okay. They're getting some scries out of the deal. This is definitely a good card to have in the matchup. Oh, this is Eldrazi Tron. You could have fooled me, opponent. We're going to get an actual basic forest here. O-Stone, not terrible. We are going to play that now. Pass the turn. I guess the Tectonic Edge should have tipped me off. Opponent attacks us for 3. They play a map. We untap. Draw Ulamog. Play Forest. Ancient Stirrings. We're going to take Karn Liberated here. Play Karn. Exile Tower. Opponent probably going to get a temple off of this expedition map. Yep, okay. So they're going to have a Reality Smasher. We have an O-Stone, though, and we're going to be following this line up with Ulamog, basically. So, opponent leaves a card on top. Oh, they play Power Plant. They attack Karn Liberated for 3. No Thought-Knot-Seer follow-up. Okay, Urza's mine. Play Ulamog. Exile this, and opponent concedes. I guess I should have hit 2 lands, but... Alright, well, we 3 and 2. So let's go ahead and open our treasure chest, and then I'll talk about this deck a little bit. We get 5 play points. A, full-arted promo, Azusa, Lost But Seeking. Azusa, sorry, Six Sigma. And a Sphinx of Foresight. So, let me check really quick. Azusa, the Magic Online promo full art. Oh, that is not the promo full art. Hang on. The price is not listed for this version. So I have no idea what this is worth. Okay. But as I was saying, so with this deck, we didn't really get a chance to... Like, I don't know what to put in those slots, or wasn't for a while. I just got a notification that my opponent was waiting for me to respond. My match 2 opponent was waiting for me to respond. Interesting. Okay. So I think instead of Trading Post and Spine of Ishsaw here, you're better off dropping both of those for Maze Mine Tomes. Especially if you have a Tron versus Tron meta. Because as our Eldrazi Tron opponent showed us, having stuff like that in the Tron matchup probably is going to be a little bit better than just a janky 4-mana artifact and a Spine of Ishsaw. I still like Spine of Ishsaw a little bit more than I like Ugin. 6-mana Ugin. I can't remember the name of 6-mana Ugin right now. And I know that's going to be a little bit controversial, but I still feel like 6-mana Ugin... 6-mana Ugin is good in matchups where card advantage matters a lot. He's good in the Tron mirror match, which might be a reason enough to play him, simply because he draws you extra cards. But I mean, like, at that point he's basically a Staff of Nin. And he doesn't even draw you the cards, he makes bears. Colorless bears, but bears. So, Ugin plays this weird dual role of occasionally being half of a Spine of Ishsaw because he can't hit lands, and a Staff of Nin. So maybe we drop Trading Post and play Staff of Nin. Because at least then we could wish for it off of Karn Great Creator. I don't know. My point is, I don't like 6-mana Ugin. I understand why he's good. I just don't like him. Every single time I've played him, I get wished of like, why isn't this a Karn kind of a deal? And it's like, well, because there's not enough Karns to run in the deck. So it's the weird, like, what is the next best card you could play? And honestly, Spine of Ishsaw destroying a single permanent and then potentially recurring itself off of Trading Post seems really tempting. Like, I like it. I don't know. I have a lot of Tron players that watch this YouTube channel and have a lot of opinions. So I'm soliciting feedback because I'm trying to get better with this deck to produce better content. And my reasoning was, I don't know what to put in these sideboard slots because I never use these sideboard slots. So we're going to try something slightly janky that might be good. Tron players of my stream and my channel, what do you guys think? What would you replace those two slots with? You let me know. Because I am not satisfied with 6-mana Ugin in the deck. And I understand that might be the best card in the slot, but I feel like there's other things that can be tested. So, anyway, let me know what you think. Leave a like, drop a comment, subscribe to the channel if you're so inclined, and remember, you can follow me on Twitch, same username over there as you find me over here, to catch me streaming live Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, 8 p.m. Eastern. And yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Bye!